Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Going great. We get to go to Indianapolis later this week. It's going to be a big adventure. Get to watch a little football. Seems like it's going to be pretty fun.
Hopefully not too much of an adventure, Tom. I'm not sure what you're expecting. Whitewater rafting, stuff like that. It's a little chilly, but whatever. We'll see. The town is empty and open for all kinds of stuff, I'm sure.
All the wonders that Western Ohio and Eastern Indiana have to offer along the sides of Interstate 70. I mean, literally could be anything in the world. There's so much to choose from.
So much of your life passes as you're just sitting in traffic in the middle of nowhere on 70 for absolutely no reason. And even during the winter, when you're like, shouldn't you be doing construction during the summer? And then they're like, this is a year-round thing. It's like the Winchester Mansion. The work never stops, and it's haunted.
Yes, Interstate 70 is definitely the Indianapolis mystery highway. That's for sure. Yeah, the construction people would like to have done their work in the summer, but they got stuck in traffic, so carried over into the winter. Here we are.
We just got here. So I am looking forward to it. It's been a while since we've been to Indianapolis. Was it a year ago?
Roughly, yes. Right about this time last year. Yeah.
And it's an annual tradition at this point. So looking forward to getting back there. So Tom, today, there's a number of things that have happened. We talked to a handful of Buckeyes. We talked to, and let's see if I can get them all, Baron Browning, Jeremy Ruckert, Wyatt Davis, and Shaun Wade.
Correct.
And I think that was all four.
That was.
And so we talked a little bit about what they had to say, and then maybe look a little bit the Big Ten, all Big Ten team, and maybe some Michigan talk because that's what we like to do here. But Tom, the spiciest news from the afternoon of speaking with the players was what?
It was a quote from Ohio State defensive back Shaun Wade. Sorry, I'm laughing. I searched a phrase on Twitter to make sure I was quoting him exactly correctly, and someone quoted something very similar and meant to say feisty Raiders team and left out the E in feisty, which really changes the meaning of that. But Shaun Wade's quote was he was asked about what the Buckeyes have to prove this Saturday, what do they have on the line, what do they have to do, and his quote was, "We've got to blow them out. We have to come to play." So, I mean, that's laying it out there. That and I don't know that Ohio State really needs to blow Northwestern out in order to make the college football playoff. If they do, then that obviously makes it more likely they get in, makes it more likely they slide up those rankings a little bit. If that's something that is in the realm of possibility, but I would think if they go in and they win 24-17 or something, I think that's probably, I really at this point can't see Ohio State getting left out if they win on Saturday.
I agree, because you can't punish them for having a win, for winning like Texas A&M, when you're comparing them with maybe Texas A&M. And yeah, I wonder, I saw somebody say, well, this Pat Fitzgerald uses this as locker room. He's going to have that on the walls of the locker room, and that's going to be more motivation for them. I don't know if it's, I don't take it as like smack talk or anything demeaning. He's saying like, yes, we need to show the committee that we are very, very good, and a big win against Northwestern, in my own way of saying it, a big win against Northwestern would show them that. He's not saying like, we're going to do this or they're terrible, we're going to blow them out. He's saying we need to blow them out, and he's telling his teammates, hey, we need to blow them out. And so it's just another level of focus to me. And certainly Pat Fitzgerald will probably take this to his team and be like, they're already counting on the win. They're already chalking up the win. And I don't know that they are necessarily, although I guess, Tom, you could say they are chalking up the win and they need to ramp up that kind of win. But to me, it's just, we need to be at our absolute best. We need to execute. We need to score, and stop them from scoring. And at the end of the day, leave their bloody corpse on the field with no hope of ever, finding solace in this loss.
That's what the ellipses is. Like in the middle of the Shaun Wade quote, we've got to blow them out. We have to come to play, ... That's the implied after portion of that.
Bloody corpse.
Exactly. Bloody corpse. Yes. No. And I can't imagine that Northwestern needs all that much added motivation this week. I mean, they have a chance to win their Big Ten championship for the first time in 20 years. Like that seems like that would be plenty of motivation all in and of itself. And I can't, this is one of these things that these guys have talked about in the past is you can't go in and say, we have to win this game by 60 points. Like you have to go execute the play that's in front of you. If you're worried about like the big picture stuff, like you can't be thinking about the college football playoff committee while you're on the field in the middle of the second quarter. You've got to be thinking, okay, what do I have to do on this play in order to execute my role of this play? Like that's it. So I do think that the bulletin board thing is a little bit overblown. And as far as bulletin board material goes, you'd have to twist this one a little bit to make it too bulletin boardy. I'm not saying I'm not going to make this the podcast title, especially on YouTube. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you would have to twist it a little bit to make it a bulletin board thing for Northwestern.
Right. You could just add a question mark at the end or something or just raise your voice at the end. Is Shaun Wade guaranteeing a victory?
Pat Fitzgerald, Zodiac Killer? ? You add a question mark to anything and boom, legal protection.
Right. We're not saying it. We're just talking about how other people might be saying it, even if they're not. So I don't the locker room talk, not the locker room talk, the bulletin board material. I don't see it there, but there has been. Pat Fitzgerald is very self-deprecating in terms of the Northwestern chances with this game when he's talking to the media, but that's not how he is with his team. They're going to be just as fired up and motivated. And when, during his press conference on Sunday, somebody asked him a question. He's like, they're like Pat or Fitz, because that's how everybody refers to him when they talk to him. Fitz, you got this Ohio State offense that is running the ball really well, and Justin Fields can do so many things, and then they throw into play action, and they've got such good receivers, and they're so dynamic, and they can do anything they want at any time. And how do you handle that? And he's just like, wow, thanks. Yeah, great. That's what I'm going to be spending my time on. I don't know. If you got any tips, text me. And so that's been some of his interactions with the media. And one of the first things he said was, I'll be going gray by the end of the week, working on Ohio State. And I'm sure he said the same thing 2 years ago, and said the same thing every week, every year when Jim Tressel was beating his teams like 49-3, and in which, God bless, Pat Fitzgerald loves Jim Tressel, and Jim Tressel loves Pat Fitzgerald, but Jim Tressel never beat the tar out of anybody like he did Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald. And it was always so odd, and they were always so, happy to see each other and so kind to each other after the game. But like during it, the Buckeyes would just destroy the Wildcats, except for 2004. We know. But that was, Shaun Wade also had another interesting thing to say. As I scroll here for it, about Michigan and what was it like not to play. And he said it definitely hurt not to get to play against Michigan. And I was mad that they kind of backed out. Then he paused for a second and he's like, but at the end of the day, that's COVID, and our health is definitely more important than the sport of football. And he got that nice qualifier in there. But I just wonder what the thought process, or the common thought among the team is about Michigan canceling that game. And I think we got a glimpse of it.
Well, I think we did. And, he kind of did the thing that we did with the podcast yesterday where did Michigan duck Ohio State? ? Boom. There's our protection. Wade had an interesting perspective on this because he's been here at Ohio State for 4 years. He will only have played the Michigan game once, because as a true freshman, he did not get to play. As a junior, he was hurt, and he was like a game time decision, and he didn't get to play 2019 up in Ann Arbor. And then this year, obviously, because of COVID, didn't get to play either. So he got to play once. He got to be a part of that 2018 win at Ohio Stadium, and that was it. So, to be a 4-year player, and a 4-year player as good as Shaun Wade, and to be a multi-year starter and only play in the game once, that's kind of weird. And as much as we've heard from everyone what a disappointment it was not to play in that game last weekend, it's got to be even more so for Wade, because you come to Ohio State to play in that game. That's one of the big selling points, is you come to Ohio State to play in the game, in the Michigan game, and to be at Ohio State 4 years and only get to do that once. That's kind of a bummer.
It's definitely a bummer, especially when that is the focus. That is so much of, you hear about it in recruiting, and then you get to experience it because you're an out-of-state player. Like, not you. Shaun Wade's an out-of-state player. You hear about it, and then you get to experience it, and then to have it taken away from you, obviously. Nobody was happy. He was asked, hey, who's standing out in the secondary? How are things going? And he said, he mentioned Rocket and Ronnie Hickman.
First name.
Exactly. And one name, only one name. He just, and he mentioned other names, but he only mentions Ronnie Hickman. He goes by Rocket, and like Prince, or I think those are the only two. Share. Prince and Share. So he's Rocket had a good game against Michigan State. He's getting better. He's improving. I think that they've had 2 weeks now, and that's great to continue to get him involved. But you've got Marcus Williamson has improved, he said, and then getting Josh Proctor, or Proc, as everybody calls him, back is another good thing. And he did say that we've got a couple of freshmen that are going to be good, but they're freshmen at the end of the day. And I thought that was funny. But so you've got these guys all coming back. But he also said that you can only improve so much with practice, and it's the games where you get better because you see different people for 4 quarters. You don't know them, and you can face 3 or 4 different guys than you've ever seen before, and so that's where you really do your most improvement. And as we talked about in a recent show, they're practicing so much for so few games, and I just thought it was interesting. They talked about, like, there's really only so much you can do with practice, and I think the entire team probably feels that way about now.
Yeah, and they have had so many practices this year compared to the number of games they've had. I think at this point it has to be close to 70 practices compared to 5 games. And there's the whole iron sharpens iron thing that they always talk about, and you're going up against, he talked about going up against Justin Fields and the wide receivers, and these are a bunch of guys who are going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. So you do get better that way. That's not, that's not just something they say that's really true, but you also, you can't simulate the intensity of a game during practice. It's not the same. And that's true at literally any level of sports. If you have ever coached a youth baseball team, you know that it's post scrimmage, post practice scrimmage kind of thing, intra squad scrimmage. Like, it is not the same as when you're playing a game. That is true of every single level of every single sport. That's how it is. And, at some point, you probably know, even if you're going up against someone as good as Chris Olave, if you've gone up against Chris Olave 3,000 times over the last 4 years, at some point you recognize, okay, Chris Olave, when his right eye twitches just a little bit, that means he's going to run a curl route. Like, you're going to, like, subconsciously pick up on stuff like that, which means you're even against a player who's as good as Chris Olave, you're not getting challenged in the way you are against someone who's unfamiliar. And you're going against someone who's unfamiliar this weekend. You're going against someone who you haven't faced all season. You may or may not have faced them at all last year, depending on who it is. He moved from the slot to the outside, so it's probably a different body type of receiver, a different player. And that's true every single week. And then whoever they play in the college football playoff semifinals, if they get there, it's the same thing. And you're playing against, again, a guy who's probably that Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson level of player, but who you're not familiar with. And that's just a tough adjustment. That's a big leap to make. And, practice can prepare you, and practice can, get you. If you don't practice well, that can lose you a game, but you can't, it's the old, you can't win the national championship in the summer, but you can lose it. You can't win the college football playoff in practice, but you can lose it. And they're just trying not to lose it right now. They're getting as ready as they can to put themselves in as good a position as they can when they finally do get to play a game again.
Yeah. And we talked to Wyatt Davis as well, who is doing much better with his ankle, his knee. That was banged up a little bit against Michigan State. He would have played last week, but obviously feels better now. Found out after practice he was named the Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. Credited Greg Stidrell with that, and thanked the voters. I think. No, I don't know if he thanked the voters, but that was obviously a nice award for him. But the most interesting thing about that is, towards the end of his session, he was asked, who has played the best on the offensive line? Which offensive lineman has played the best? And he said Nick Petit-Frere. And I don't know that he maybe took the question the right way, because then he started talking about how he's improved the most.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure seemed like, this is the guy who's been maybe the most impressive, kind of like not necessarily like the Big Ten Coach of the Year, where you're doing the most with the least. That's certainly not Nick Petit-Frere, but maybe when you've covered the most ground and made the largest impression. But he did say that he's motivating me to go harder. I'm excited for his future. He's improved the most to me, and I think we would all agree with that. And yeah, I thought that was interesting that when you've got three guys on the first team All Big Ten offensive line, and Nick Petit-Frere was, I believe, a second teamer, that I don't think Wyatt Davis is alone in saying that Petit-Frere has been the best offensive lineman on this team.
That's one of those things that at the beginning of the year, that was one of the big question marks. Okay, who's going to play right tackle? And that was, going into the Nebraska game, it was like, okay, well, here's something we're really watching, because you don't know what to expect there. That's a big loss. They've got to replace him. And, you didn't completely know what to expect with Thayer Munford on the other side, because he'd missed a bunch of time last year and had not been quite himself much of last fall. And then the season started, and it was just like, when was the last time you had any questions about the tackles when those two guys were in? I mean, obviously the Michigan State game, when those two guys were not there, that was they became a question then. But when Petit-Frere and Thayer Munford have been there, it's just been like, oh, okay, you don't even notice them. They're just like quietly out there, just shutting down whoever they're facing, and it's like fine, okay. So yeah, I mean that has to be for someone to go from like a question mark to like an exclamation point, really, not just a question mark to a period, like question mark to an exclamation point. That's pretty big. I think you've had that on the interior of the defensive line, and you've had that at the tackle position. I think those are the two spots that I came into the year wondering about the most, that have just been kind of like, oh no, that's not a problem at all. That's fine. Okay. I guess everyone needs to find something else to worry about now.
It is. It's like, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore because it's not a problem. And you do the same thing with Justin Fields, except you see him with the ball every day, and every game, and you see what he's doing, and he's not a concern, and the tackles aren't a concern, and getting them back will be key. Anything else from Wyatt Davis? He did mention like this just does not feel like the same as last year's Big Ten championship game. Obviously, that was the 13th game of the year last year, and this is only going to be game 6, and it's you just don't have the number of reps, he said, and you don't have just the body of work throughout the season, and the execution isn't where it would normally be when you're in a Big Ten championship game. And so all of this feels differently. And I wonder if that helps. Does that hurt going into the game? Or it may not do anything. It may just be, here's what the game against Northwestern would look like in the middle of the season, kind of like it did last year when they played. I'm not saying it's going to be 52-3. I think Northwestern is better. But maybe it being a different Big Ten championship game will allow for a larger margin of victory, given the way the last couple of Big Ten championship games have gone for the Buckeyes.
I mean, go back to last year's Big Ten championship game, and that was the third game in a row where they had played Penn State at home, at Michigan, and then Wisconsin. And it's like, why did they come out slow? Well, friends, let me tell you what your body probably feels like after you play Penn State and Michigan back-to-back to close the regular season. Spoiler alert, probably not great. And Wisconsin is a pretty physical team. And so it probably was not super fun to be out there in the first half of that game against Wisconsin. And then they fell behind and they came back and won comfortably. But that slow first half cost them that number 1 seed and cost them the first round bye against Oklahoma. And so then they had to go play Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl instead. And that was it. That was the difference between playing the national championship game and not, was playing Clemson versus playing an Oklahoma team that really didn't belong in the college football playoff last year. And I can say that with some confidence because, well, that's pretty much every time they're in the college football playoff, isn't it? Okay, then. I did think it was interesting. He said the exact quote was, "It doesn't feel like a normal Big Ten championship," which was interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One is they have been in the Big Ten championship frequently enough that they know, like, this is what a normal Big Ten championship feels like. I have a large enough data set to be able to tell you what a normal Big Ten championship game week feels like, and this is not it. Which that was one takeaway there. But the other thing is, it really is like, this is like a mid-season game, and that was one of his points, was they don't have the reps. You can't. This goes back to what we talked about in the Shaun Wade conversation. The practice reps are great, but the practice reps are not game reps, and they have to just make the most of all of the game reps they're getting this weekend. And I took away from that if they do get way ahead, I wonder if they're keeping the starters out there longer than they might have otherwise. And that will, I'm sure, get interpreted as, look at Ohio State running up the score to try and impress the committee. But it might at least also partly be, hey, the starters need reps because they really have not had a lot of reps this year. And, again, practice reps are great. They don't replace game reps, and the only way to get game reps is to play them in the games.
Yeah. I mean, how else are you supposed to do that? I think it may have been Kyle Trask talking about it. He can't wait to get back to the SEC championship game because his old SEC championship game backpack is really tattered now. And it's like, because they were in there in 2016, I'm guessing he was a true freshman at that point. But, like, for the Buckeyes, they probably have got, like, nice. They're still in the bags. The bags are still in the bags. In their tote bags, their backpacks, in the closet. Maybe they're back home with the parents because they don't have enough closet space for all of the gifts from the bowl games and the playoffs and Big Ten championship game. There's just so much swag going around, and it's just too bad that, maybe Florida doesn't have as much as other schools, and you feel bad for that. But hopefully, Kyle, if it is Kyle, I can't remember exactly, but enjoy that new tote bag. And,
backpack fell apart is not the worst thing that has happened to Kyle Trask in the last week, if that's any solace. Also, true. Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade were wearing matching, looked like new white puffy Nike coats. So maybe that's Big Ten championship game swag that they got this week. Anytime guys are wearing matching gear, it's like, I bet that's new. So that maybe there's Kyle Trask probably down in Gainesville probably doesn't need a big puffy winter coat, but
could be new gear, or Tom starting a boy band.
Now Kyle Trask seems more the boy band type than Shaun Wade, but it's a possibility. Listen, I don't want to tell you you're an idiot. I don't want to tell you. I don't want that to be what this is. So let's just talk. Let's just change the subject and move on. It's fine.
All right, let's go to Jeremy Richter, who was another one of the Buckeyes who talked, and it is interesting to see him become one of the. We talked to him kind of regularly. This may be like the third time we've talked to him this year, and he also in that realm, he said the tight ends as a group are some of the leaders of the team, and they are kind of the epitome of what you would want from any group of leaders, because the tight ends, the most thankless position maybe in Ohio State football history, and they it's a good group. They just do their work. They keep their head down. They don't ask for anything. I don't even think they get meals, Tom. and they just go to work every day. They do their job, and they do it well. And he did say that even though maybe they don't get the affection, the love and affection from outside, they certainly get it from the coaches and their teammates inside the Woody. So that's good.
It's always interesting to me when we talk to the tight ends to see what different ways people could come up with to ask the same one question, which is it a bummer that you don't get the football more than you do? Because it seems like that's a bummer. Is that a bummer? And very consistently, the tight ends will give the answer that Rucker gave on Tuesday. I know what day it is, Tuesday. And that answer is, they came to Ohio State to become well-rounded players, to be, there are places you can go if you just want to catch the football. They came to Ohio State to be well-rounded players. And you look at the Ohio State tight end room, and the stats they put up at the college level are not super impressive. And then they all get drafted in the NFL. Like every single one of them is getting drafted in the NFL. And that is that's a tribute to the kind of holistic approach they take to the tight end room, where you have to be a really good blocker. You have to be you have to be able to be a good pass catcher. And these are all great athletes. And we all saw what Jeremy Richter did in the Big Ten championship game last year. But that's not what, you're not coming to Ohio State as a tight end to be 1,000-yard receiver. Like, that's just not what it is. And that is true sometimes at the wide receiver position too. I mean, you look at Terry McLaurin at Ohio State, like for years, Terry McLaurin was not that big a receiver. Like he would catch passes sometimes, but what you noticed about Terry McLaurin was what a great all-around player he was. He was such a good blocker. He always, the Terry McLaurin highlight reel is like, oh, look, he blocked 2 players in this play. Oh, look, he blocked 3 players on this play. And then he caught a 68-yard touchdown. And the Jeremy Richter highlight reel is a lot of like, oh, wow, look at this really good block. Look at this really good. And then, and he also caught this one-handed touchdown pass against Wisconsin at the Big Ten championship game last year. But it's that like all-around development. And, at this point, like if you're a tight end coming to Ohio State, like what you're coming here for. Like it is literally a punchline that you do not get the football. I don't think anyone's coming here and being told, no, man. You are the one. You are the chosen one. You are going to be the one who catches 1,500 yards as a tight end at Ohio State. Like I don't. And if you come here and you believe that, like that's not, that's on you, man. Like that's, but I have a feeling that they're all coming for exactly what they say they're coming for, to be a good all-around player and get developed and turn into an NFL player. And it's not just about college stats. You can come to Ohio State, win a bunch of football games, get a bunch of Big Ten championship game swag, and then go to the NFL. The championship game swag, he didn't specifically mention it, but I think it was implied.
When we talk to Kevin Wilson and this subject is always brought up, you can just see like just he's like, I wish when I say there's more to being a tight end than catching the ball, that it would register with you that there is more to the tight end than catching the ball. And it is so funny because anytime we talk to a tight end, it doesn't matter. The subject is going to come up. And it's like, imagine you are an orphan and then the only thing that people talk to you about is, so no parents, huh? What's that like? Like, well, we talked about it 3 weeks ago, and then you see them 4 weeks later and you're like, still no parents, huh? I'm literally an orphan. Okay. I'm here at this orphanage. Nothing has changed. You saw me 3 weeks ago. You see me every single Saturday. I have no parents. Stop asking about my parents. And you know what? There's more to life than just having parents. I have a good life. I do friends. I do things. I have friends. I have hobbies. I don't need my parents telling me what to do. I have a nun. I have a piano teacher. Like, what more do I need? Parents.
I have no follow-up. I have nothing. Maybe if they're not feeding the tight ends, are they standing there with an empty bowl? Please, may I have some more? Is that what the Ohio State tight ends are like in the lunchroom?
And then they say, no, you go block. And we talked.
One thing that Jeremy Richter talked about that I did think was interesting. He was asked, who is like the leader on the team this year? Like who's one of the the people who's like really stood out as a leader? And he's a guy in offense, so you immediately go, okay. I start typing Justin Fields even before the question is asked.
Jay.
And the J was correct, but the answer he gave was Jonathan Cooper, which he talked about how he's been a really great vocal leader this year, and how you can really tell not just how important Ohio State is to him, but how important the city of Columbus is to him. Cooper from Gahanna, so he's a local product. And, he's someone who has gone through so much to be in the position he's in right now. And he's had a really solid year. Like the whole defensive line has had a good year, but Cooper has been he's finally been, he was one of those people that everyone kind of was like, okay, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Because he was like a borderline 5-star guy coming out of high school. And then it was just kind of like, he's been okay, but he's had a lot of injuries, and he missed a bunch of last season, ended up taking that red shirt, playing only 4 games specifically so he could come back this year. And then it was like, oh man, like if he takes a red shirt, misses out on the Big Ten championship game last year, misses out on the bowl game last year, specifically to come back this year and then doesn't get a season, like that would be like deeply unfair. But it is very cool to see what he has turned into as an on-field player, but also as an off-field like leader on this team. Like he's just one of those like good for you, like good. He's a really good dude. He's always very insightful when we talk to him. Like he's always got interesting stuff to say. I always enjoy interviewing Jonathan Cooper, but yeah, he is. That was not the answer I was expecting. But as soon as he started talking, I was like, yeah, when they put out those videos, he is the one talking in front of the team an awful lot. So that probably should have been my tip off.
Did you give me an answer on who is wearing the Block O next year?
I didn't give you an answer. Let me think about that.
Okay. So when I asked you the last show and you said, you wanted me to let you think about that, I will continue to let you think about it. We can address it tomorrow.
In my defense, I forgot.
In my defense, I did not think about what I asked time to think about. So that's fine. Totally fine. The first Buckeye that we talked to and the last Buckeye we will discuss here today, Baron Browning, who I thought it was interesting. Somebody asked him, so how much did you talk to Pete Werner about playing Sam and, all of the tips, when would you discuss that with them? Would you ask for help? And he's like, no, not really, because Pete was off learning his own new position. So I didn't want to bother him. So I just relied on coaching and, knowing the defense as he did. I just thought that was kind of funny that, no, I didn't bother him because he's doing his own, trying to learn his own thing. It's like, why would I copy off of him when he's trying to copy off of somebody else?
Well, I heard that and I was like, that's kind of weird. And then he talked about how he and Pete were like really good friends and had been roommates at one point. So it's not, it's not like they don't get along. It really is like, no, Pete Werner has a bunch of crap he's got to do. He's got to figure out his own thing, man. He's trying to learn how to speak Spanish. He doesn't have time to teach me how to speak French. Like that's not, not
to be like dour or anything, but it's like you're drowning and you're going to look at Pete and you see he's drowning. He's like, well, I guess we'll both learn to swim here.
Drowning people and orphans. Boy, what an uplifting show this has been. I tell you,
happy holidays. So, anything from Barron that stood out other than what we just said? He was asked, how important is it to stop the run? Is it important to stop the run?
I would argue that it is an important thing.
Right. Then we would disagree.
Northwestern ran for 400 yards last week against Illinois, and he was asked about that, and he said, they're focused on not letting the opponent run it, but that's their first focus as a unit every week. And maybe almost at times too much their focus, where they've gotten passed on, where the opponent is running for like 1.8 yards per carry and then throwing for like 400 yards. It's like, what if you gave up 2.8 yards per carry and not 400 yards? Yeah, and that's one of those things I've talked to Ross Fulton about on the morning show before on our Chalk Talk shows. That's just such a fundamental thing with Ohio State is don't let the opponent run the ball. Don't let the opponent run the ball. Don't let their opponent run the ball, which is one of those things where, why does Ohio State have such great success against Wisconsin? Why does Ohio State beat Wisconsin every single year when most of the Big Ten never beats Wisconsin? Because what does Wisconsin try to do? Line up, mash the ball at you, run the ball, maul you, and Ohio State is just big enough to stand up to it and focused enough on stopping the run that, you get those, every great Wisconsin running back seems like they come into the Ohio State game with, averaging 180 yards a game and then finish with 23 carries for 67 yards. And it's like, wow, how did that happen again for the 9th straight year?
It helps to have more than one dimension. That is for sure. I think Northwestern has like 1.5 dimensions, and it's not, and it's 0.75 and 0.75 because neither is great against the better offenses and the better defenses. Anything else from Baron Browningtown before we touch quickly on the All Big Ten team?
I think those are my big takeaways from Baron. Yeah.
Okay. And so the offensive individual award winners were announced today. Defense will be announced on Wednesday. The best awards, the special teams awards, will be announced Thursday. But on Tuesday, Justin Fields, for the second time in a row, was named the Graham George Offensive Player of the Year and also the Greasy Breeze Quarterback of the Year for the Big Ten, which is obviously just the best, worst name for an award that there is.
It's either named for 2 Purdue quarterbacks or being downwind of a Hardee's. Like those are the only 2. Like the naming convention for Big Ten awards is old guy who used to be good at this and more recent guy who was good at this. That's so Bob Greasy, 1960s Purdue quarterback, Drew Brees, 1990s to 2000 Purdue quarterback. Like, okay, I get it. But what if we picked some different names that did not make it sound like, I mean, that's a weird one. And here's the other thing. At some point, like, stop naming it after Purdue players if you're just going to give it to an Ohio State quarterback every year.
That's the thing.
Since Russell Wilson won it in 2011, so since 2012, Ohio State's starting quarterback has won it literally every year except for 2015, in which case Ohio State kind of had 2 starting quarterbacks and kind of had no starting quarterbacks. Every year that Ohio State has just had, like, here's a starting quarterback, it has been the Ohio State quarterback who has won it. So, should it be the Rex Kern Bobby Hoying Award?
The Kern Germain?
Mm-hmm.
Kern Barrett?
Kern Smith?
Kern Smith? Because even when Connor Cook won it in 15, he was sandwiched by 3 years of JT Barrett winning. So if JT Barrett doesn't get benched in 2015, he's going to win it that year as well. And he would have been a 4-time winner of the award, which is pretty crazy. Dwayne Haskins, the only Buckeye in that group from 2011 to 2020 who didn't win it twice. So he kind of sucks. I'm just saying, like, win it twice, bud. That's all. Wyatt Davis, obviously, I mentioned the Remington Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year. Now that's a decent name. That's a decent name. Richter Howard Receiver of the Year, Ty Freifogel. Pat Richter, you're gonna listen. You've got a Big Ten Receiver Award named after a Wisconsin receiver. I have no idea who Pat Richter is and what he did. I'm sure I'm just going to guess, career best season for him. And you can look this up, Tom, as I'm saying this. I will guess career best receptions 29 in a year for the great Pat Richter, who probably played in 1963.
I think 61 and 62 might have been his last couple of years. Scrolling down, surprisingly, receptions is relatively low on the.
Is that right?
Yes, on the Wisconsin leaderboards. Single game, 11 receptions in the Rose Bowl in 1962.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good.
Career receptions, 121.
All right.
Nowhere on the top 10 lists of receiving yards for games, but he had 15 receiving touchdowns in a game. He is 10th all time in career receiving touchdowns at Wisconsin, which is exclusive company. Do you remember Lee DeRamus in the early 90s?
Yes.
He tied Lee DeRamus. So really, maybe it should be the DeRamus Award.
Man, I respect a lot of Wisconsin receivers over the years. I don't know. Maybe this dude was an All-American, I'm guessing.
I think he ended up, I'm going to click on his Wikipedia page. I think he was the Wisconsin AD. He was the Wisconsin AD.
Oh, yes. So he named these awards.
He was
lousy son of a...
He was responsible for hiring Barry Alvarez. And now we all have our answer.
Yes.
There's the why and the how. Okay, there you go. Mystery solved.
Yes,
mystery solved.
We can move on. The All Big Ten team for the coaches featured Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, Thayer Munford, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson, and also Justin Fields. That was the first team. Master Teague on the second team with Nick Petit-Frere, and then Harry Miller's on the third team. The honorable mentions are Trey Sermon, Luke Farrell, and Jeremy Ruckert. The media then is Justin Fields on the first team, along with Wyatt Davis and Thayer Munford. So that means Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are on the second team for the media. And I know a lot of people were upset about this. But when Ty Freifogel is the receiver of the year, he's made the first team for the coaches or for the media. And then you've got David Bell, who puts up all kinds of numbers. Bell and Freifogel, their receiving yards are greater than Olave and Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, I believe, are the 2 pass-catching leaders in the Big Ten. So, at least all 4 of them got to be first-team All-Big Ten, so I won't get too upset about that. The most egregious thing in all of this, Tom, though, is that Justin Fields was not a unanimous selection by the media. And my theory is that somebody voted having only watched one game this year. And that one game was the Ohio State-Indiana game where Michael Penix threw for 491 yards and Justin Fields threw 3 interceptions. And I'm pretty sure they only saw the interceptions and only saw like the second half of that game for Indiana and saw no other football last year or the year before that when Penix played or since. So, that's just my theory.
It's not a bad one. And that would explain Ty Freifogel being the number 1 receiver in the conference as well. And, that's fine. Like, it's hard to justify complaining that Ohio State got screwed on the team where the first team offense is basically like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, that's like half of the. Yes, the Northwestern site Lake the Post tweeted more than half of the first team is Ohio State. You don't say. Yeah, and this year with as not super inspiring as much of the rest of the Big Ten has been offensively, like, yeah, guess what? I don't want to spoil anything, but Ohio State might have the best offense in the Big Ten. That's you don't have to be that perceptive to notice that. Even the College Football Playoff Committee has seemed to notice that. So that's an indication you really don't need to watch the games particularly closely.
Yeah, 12 Buckeyes on offense were first, second, third team or honorable mention. So that's pretty good when you're even getting the bench in there. The last bit of things that I wanted to talk about before we get out of here, Tom, is the Michigan-Iowa game has been canceled. Michigan reports of upwards of 50 players unavailable for this game, which means that they would still have 70 players available. But no, let's not go there. Let's just, they are completely decimated by COVID. And so they had to cancel the game, which, is unfortunate because I was looking forward to watching them play one more. And apparently their season is now over. They may not even be going bowling, according to some reports, and which is sad. But Tom, the thing that bothers me most here is Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz, who was scheduled to play Michigan, has now said, we wouldn't be able to play. We don't want to play anybody else. I don't want to play somebody else. We're already 75% of the way prepared for Michigan, and we couldn't possibly prepare for somebody else. It's like you're driving to Florida from Ohio and you get down to Georgia and then the vacation is canceled and you're like, well, I guess we'll just go back home. It's like, well, you could just let's go to New Orleans. No, we're 75% of the way to Florida. And so we're just going to do nothing. And it's not like he's protecting a national title. It's not like he's trying to hold on to that number 4 spot in the playoffs. He's just, it would be too hard. It would be too much.
When you're Iowa and you do such different and diverse things every week, especially in offense, well, that's not just the kind of thing you can throw together. The running the ball between the tackles,
for instance,
the play action passes to tight ends. This is not something you can just slap together in 5-10 minutes, sir. I'd like you to show a little respect, sir.
You're right. When it's third and 8, you can't just throw a 3rd and 5 route in there. It's like you got to do that all week long.
Did we or did we not see Iowa hang 55 points on Ohio State a couple of years ago? I think this is a team that has shown very consistently, such as that one time, that they deserve a tremendous amount of respect. And I think you should show it to them. That's all I'm saying.
You're right. I do apologize. But if that 55-point Iowa team, I bet they wouldn't mind playing again. Maybe see if they'll play. Like, hey, you guys want to let's get the band back together.
See if Rutgers is available this weekend. What? No reason. No. What?
So that's unfortunate. Although, is missing out on an Iowa game, Tom, really that unfortunate?
Iowa is both not a particularly entertaining product and also one of the better football products in the Big Ten this year. So actually, I'm going to say yes.
You're right.
And if you're Iowa, like, why would you not be kind of just on standby? Ohio State would have played literally anyone in the Big Ten threw at them last week. Like Maryland, fine. Rutgers again, fine. Like whoever, like play another game. Iowa just sounds like it seems like if they got another crack at Nebraska or another crack at Minnesota or something, like, sure, why not play them again? What the heck?
Yeah.
Like, you've already done the game prep, so okay, do it. Like Ohio State would have played, Illinois last week if they had, to make up for that game, or in Maryland. But if they had to play a makeup game, a repeat, if they were playing Nebraska again last week, I'm sure they would have been fine playing Nebraska again next week. So
yeah, and it's not like these are foreign teams to them. They see them in cut-ups while they're preparing for other teams. And like, who is this yellow and blue team? I've never. Are they new? Is this some AAC team? And it's like, no, we're Sunbelt. More MAC basically this year. Tom, anything else before we get out of here? Anything you want to touch on? Anything we are missing? We need to speak up about?
Well, the new college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday night. And you always ask me who I'm going to have on the following morning's morning show. And guess what, friends? It's Tony. Yay. We're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. Tony's making his resigned, disgusted face. Like, well, I guess we do have to do that. So we'll have, I'm pushing Ross Fulton back one day this week. He's releasing his Chalk Talk article on Wednesday. It's a really good look ahead at Northwestern. I got a chance to read through it already. He'll be on the Thursday morning show, but we really need to, of all weeks, to have a college football playoff rankings recap. Tonight is probably a pretty good night to record one of those. So it'll be interesting to see where Ohio State, I can't imagine Ohio State is going to move. It'll just sort of be interesting to see what else they do in the polls with Texas A&M they didn't play. Cincinnati didn't play. Florida lost. It'll just be interesting to see, as we always say, look at the bottom of the polls. That tells you what they're really thinking about the people at the top.
Will somebody jump Cincinnati, or will Cincinnati just take that spot that was held by Florida?
Did Iowa State play last week? I think Iowa State was off. So everyone was off last week. Yeah. It was, I think just Alabama and Florida played, and Alabama is not moving down and Florida is not staying where they were. So it will be interesting to see how far down Florida moves. That's maybe the most interesting thing to me today is, does Florida move down below Cincinnati? Because they better. Yes, they should.
But Iowa State was ahead of them.
And yet, will Iowa State be ahead of Florida? Well, and that may tell you a little bit about what they're thinking they might do if Florida does somehow upset Alabama on Saturday, which, again, don't hold your breath, but you never know. 2020, sometimes weird things happen.
Sometimes. And so we will do that, and you can look forward to that tomorrow. Also, tomorrow, signing day, and so we'll have a ton of coverage on that. I know Alex and Bill and Mark already have stuff planned, and so you'll be able to see that at BuckeyeScoop.com tomorrow. Feel free to hang out on the Ask the Insiders board because we will all be there. It's kind of an all hands on deck. It's our first signing day, which is, it's a college football holiday. And so, Tom, when did you put your signing day tree up? Right after Thanksgiving, right?
Obviously, yes. Yes, hung all the letters of intent were hung by the chimney with care.
Although it's a different Saint Nick.
Oh, yes.
But anyway.
Does he come down the chimney with a bag? That's the question.
The thing is, he's so small, he just falls right down. There's no struggle. He's just right through. And then he can, doesn't even have to duck his head as he's getting out of the chimney into the living room. It's a great, great scene. And he's just a magical little elf. Anything else, Tom, before we go?
Nope. Orphans, drowning people, and Nick Saban breaking into your house via chimney. Nope. I think we've covered everything. We're good for today.
Good.
I'm sure we'll be back tomorrow with another show. So that seems to be how it goes.
Yes. Speaking of dark times, yes, another show tomorrow, and then another one after that, and then we will be in Indianapolis soon. So that'll be fun. We are looking forward to that in all seriousness. So thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.